Hey y'all, it is day 150. Welcome to Spiritual Healthcare for yet another Wednesday morning. I hope you guys had a really great couple of weeks. I know last week we kind of postponed everything because I've got lots of stuff that's coming up that's being set up, tours and all sorts of crazy things. Working on some shows right now and a number of other things. So welcome this week at least. I'm back and ready to go. I hope you guys are too. Welcome, as I say, to day 150. It's crazy that we've been doing this for all this time. Morning, Margie. I missed you too. I missed you guys. Like, it's funny because we had so much going on in the last week here that everything just kind of got crammed together, and then Wednesday blew up last week and whatever. So I had to miss it. But so we're back. We're back. Good morning, Dan. Morning, everyone. Morning to everybody just logging in. It's good to see you all again. I'm so sorry last week got postponed. With the summer coming up, everything's starting to to grind again, to move and to roll forward. So it's crazy. So good morning. This is Sally. Good morning, Sally. Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy week. Have some really good news though as well. Barnes and Noble, so this is really great because most of you guys are American that tune in. The Barnes and Noble bookstore has decided to start stocking Haunted magazine, so I'm really excited about that. I think everybody that is a contributor to that magazine was excited to know that. That because normally Haunted magazine you have to order out of the UK, and it's in the UK everywhere. And whatnot, and now Barnes and Noble has picked it up, so Americans will now be able to go to the store and actually buy Haunted magazine, which is kind of nice. It's hopping the pond now, so that's really cool. So you guys will be able to do that soon. I'm imagining. I haven't heard a specific date, but I'm guessing I know it's within the next 10 days. So that's cool. That's super cool. The other thing is that the dates for Historically Haunted. So I started this tour. It's kind of like this what I call like an immersive walking classroom. I started this way back a good number of years ago, and I wanted to share it with everybody. So Historically Haunted is a live show that's going to be coming out in August. And as I've done it here in Edmonton now for at least the last, I would say, 6 to 7 years, and it's been a really fun. And so my idea is that I want to be able to bring it to everybody, because there's so many people, of course, who can't get here, can't fly here, go one way or the other, especially with all of these ridiculous restrictions. So I'm working right now on a ability to be able to send it to you guys as well. So whether it be like a live stream type thing or something like that, I'm going to make sure that you guys are going to be able to get tickets and attend this. And it's really cool. It's basically what I do is I take a group, large class, in and around the secrets of my city, which is Edmonton, Alberta. And because it's got such a bizarre history, like really dark, bizarre history. And to some of the places that I've investigated over the years that have been my clients, and whatnot. And I basically, take you guys around and show you guys what is in our downtown core and all these like really bizarre hidden secrets and things. So, good morning to Des and Nigel. Nice to see everyone. And Robert, I know you're there. That's cool. So yeah, this is going to be, it's going to be really awesome. The first date for sure is going to be August the 7th. I don't know if I'm going to be live streaming that one or not. But right now there's going to be probably a few more things coming out. Either way, I'm going to be able to get you guys, involved in some of these live shows that are coming out. So, I'm really excited about that and be able to share this with you guys because, as I say, with everything going on and the devastation that is currently the entertainment industry, as well as the live show, like theatrical side of things, I think it's important to be able to like have this stuff available to people and whatever, as I slowly work to start booking live shows around the US and Canada again. Slowly but surely. It's crazy. There's restrictions people don't even realize that are there when you start getting into the mechanics of all of this. So it's been a bit of a fight, but We keep it going, and we'll see what happens. Robert's saying a live stream would be cool, and I think it would open a lot of doors for more paranormal stuff. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's going to allow for people, as I say, to participate in my shows, which are always super interactive and live and stuff like that. It'll be really fun. So today, really great questions came through over the last couple of weeks. And today I wanted to talk about two that came one came from Twitter and the other one came from a panphysicism group on Facebook. And so I thought I would start with that one because one will kind of lead into the other a little bit. And the first question that was asked was, how does organ donation affect the next donor's life and the receiver? So this doesn't on the surface seem like a paranormal question, but it actually really is a paranormal question because there is a lot of overtone as to why and how stuff begins to happen when you end up having an organ replaced. And there's been studies on this for a very, very long time. And for the longest time, for years, people have leaned into this idea that it had to do with post-mortem survival, so life after death, survival after death, and whatnot. And there's been tons of studies done on it. The public awareness of this phenomenon, or the paranormal side of transplants and stuff, started with the publication of a book in '97 called A Change of Heart. And it was about a lady by the name of Claire Sylvia who had a heart transplant in 1988. And what ended up happening was that she began to take on characteristics and traits of the donor. So she ended up craving food she normally hated, gaining talents, enjoying things like beer, which she never liked before, like all sorts of really, really bizarre things. It's really strange. And anyway, in a dream one night, she met a guy by the name of Tim L. And she ended up talking with this guy, and she ended up at the end of the dream kissing him and then sort of drawing him into her. And she woke up and she didn't know what the heck had happened or what was going on. And in another dream that she had, she ended up changing from a woman into a guy and then back again. And she had no idea what this was about. Like, it was very, very strange. Now, keep in mind that if you are an organ donor or you get a donor organ, you never know who it is, right? You never ever get that information. Or very rarely do you get that information unless the family comes and tells you. So she didn't know any of this. And it turned out later, she ended up discovering that the guy who donated the heart was a fellow by the name of Tim L. Was absolutely accurate. All of the cravings and foods and things that she had started to pick up were his. It was completely his. It was all his behavior, very specific things. And in a 1992 study, it was 3 of 47 heart transplant recipients reported a complete, distinct change in personality entirely following a transplant operation. So this is something that's relatively common. It happens often, and not just with hearts. It happens with lungs, eyes, anything that you're interchanging basically in your body. He seems to have the potential of this. So for the longest time anyway, in psi research, everybody kind of attributed this to some sort of survival after death type thing, whether it be like a spirit or something like that. So here's what they've discovered, and this is where this gets really interesting and blends into the next question because it's about paranormal investigation. So this is really cool. So recently, what they've begun to uncover, and it wasn't until the discovery of memory cells and quantum entanglement, believe it or not, goes back to that they realized that some of these people, what was happening was that they were actually picking up on memory cells that were in the organs. So what they were thinking was, a spirit or presence or something like that, actually had more to do with the fact that these cells hang on to things. They hang on to things. And way back in spiritual healthcare, this was, probably about a month ago now, we talked about the idea that with quantum entanglement, that you can have half a particle kind of on, doing one thing, like, in this instance, remaining with the body, and the other half of a particle that is now with the organ, right? It's with the organ and it's hanging around and it's basically picking up on things. And so what's interesting about this is the fact that it seems to be that these people are picking up on what is essentially memory cells within these organs, and they're picking up on what's going on. It's very weird, and whatnot. So this seems to be what the carryover is with these people. There has been a lot of exploration, I guess, into the idea of cellular memory. And Stephen Broad, who is huge in this field, in this area specifically, suggested that this approach is wrong. He was like, no, it doesn't make any sense. That there's just fatal flaws in the idea that this is a cellular memory thing, whatever. But they're now beginning to understand that, that's what it is. And it doesn't have to do necessarily with biology per se, but more into the lines of quantum entanglement and these cells sort of beginning to go from one place to the other. So it's really, really wild. And the fact that our bodies are able to pick up on this stuff is pretty cool. So how does organ donation affect the next donor's life? Well, it seems to in a lot of cases. And that's one of the many ways. Cravings that people don't understand, talents that they've picked up that they never had before. There's been a number of cases, for example, where the person never played a musical instrument, and now all of a sudden they can play a musical instrument. It's really crazy. So it's a really interesting question. It's an interesting probability. I will throw up an article from the Science Encyclopedia on this that you guys will find really interesting if you're interested in this stuff. Because it's really cool, and it's just a really, really neat topic. So I hope that kind of answers Shangzhen's question, because it is really, really cool. That being said, the next question that I wanted to grab onto, and I completely have lost track of who asked this question, so forgive me. Forgive me. I don't know who asked this, but we're going to answer it anyway. And that is, with all the talk of paranormal investigations on TV and knowing that that's flawed, what is an investigation really like? And I thought this was a great topic. This is a great question because I think it gets so skewed and so flawed, and it just, if you're thinking that all the stuff on TV is real, just turn that off. Just turn that off, because it's very very Hollywoodized, very, very Hollywoodized. People running around in the dark with cameras and, screaming and yelling and chasing things and, poking at the bear and all this stuff. It's funny. So let's talk about that. What is an investigation actually like? What is this? What happens? Well, I can talk about it from my standpoint, at least. I can give you guys an example of what happens if I get called into a case and have to investigate from beginning to end. And it's been interesting because dealing with clients over the years, some of them really do think that picture that they see on ghost shows and stuff like that is very real, and it really isn't. And I think one of the biggest fallacies is that people automatically think that investigations always happen at night, and I think that is a completely media driven understanding, because it just looks creepier on television if you're in the dark. But the reality is that you find out when the activity's happening, and you go during the time it's happening. If that's at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then you have to be there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You go when the occurrences are actually being reported. So the first thing for me when I'm dealing with clients is I always end up meeting them outside of their house, because oftentimes their house has become such a massive stressor, that they are just, they're too wired. You can't get a sense of the person. And so oftentimes what we'll do is the crew, whoever I've got contracted with me for that case, we will sit down and we will do a solid in-depth interview with those people. So we talk about family history, we talk about medical history, mental health history, stressors in their experience, what they do for fun, drug use, drug interactions, medications they've been on, any addiction, substance abuse, anything like that. So there's a very long, in-depth interview process. It's about 2 to 3 hours that we go through, including as much of the history of the property as we can find out as well. Do you guys do any renovations? What's the history of the property look like? What do you know? What has neighbors told you? So on and so forth. So it's quite an in-depth process, and usually by the end of that interview, we can pretty much come close to telling you whether or not what you've got going is paranormal, and which always throws people because they automatically think, well, you didn't actually go to the house. Yeah, well, there's red flags that we're looking for over the length of the conversation, and when you've got the right people that are sitting there listening, you can start to pick some of this stuff out. So that's where we actually start it, is there. And a lot of the cases never actually get past that point. Usually you can turn around and say, this is what that is. People are bringing you photographs. You can, kind of debunk the photographs at the table and things like that. So there's certain behaviors and things that we're looking for and listening for that will clue us in that something's really going on in the house, as well as behaviors within the people, which will tell you as well. So from that point, if we find that there is something going on, what we end up doing is we actually make an appointment to go visit the property, and we start taking a really, really hardcore look at any plausible physical, natural explanation that we possibly can. So it's a really rigorous process. Sometimes it will be, bringing in architect specialists, or bringing in, medical professionals, or bringing in, whatever it takes, social workers, all sorts of stuff that we start to dig through the property to try to figure out what exactly is happening. We've had some really weird stuff come up over the years, including things like, our EMF meters being triggered by static in ductwork. Stuff like that, like really, really bizarre things. So we spend quite a bit of time on the property itself trying to figure out what's going on. Good example of this was a number of years ago. We did a case where the entire place, the entire house, was full of electromagnetic fields that were coming from a very, very old transmitter in the basement that had not been uninstalled, and they had basically deactivated it, but it had not been uninstalled, and it was generating this bizarre level of electromagnetics that, it would have knocked anybody right on their ass. Like it was really crazy. So we're looking for things like that, things that are weird in the house or anomalous that shouldn't be there. And all the equipment, all the gear, and I know I've mentioned this before, there is no such thing as a ghost meter or a ghost box or anything like that. All the gear that we're looking at has to do with getting a baseline in the environment. So when we bring in equipment, we're not dealing with, necessarily looking for ghosts. What we're doing is trying to get a baseline on the environment, figure out what is normal, so that when something happens, we can actually figure out what it is, where the anomalies actually are. So that's a lot of the equipment that we're using, everything from video cameras to electromagnetic field meters, tri-field meters, looking for weird ranges in light, static, anything environmental that could be just not right, could be just off. So that's mainly what we're doing. And sometimes it does take a while. We've got to set everything up. You got to kind of sit and wait and then watch for those anomalies to start popping up. Every once in a while, you'll pull out stuff like audio recorders, audio, video, super important, always run together every time. It drives me crazy when people are putting audio recorders down and no video camera, because at that point you've lost any hope of proving that what you've got is paranormal at all. So video, audio recorders always go together. And you sometimes we'll sit and chat. We just sit and chat. Sometimes people, I think, get so hung up on the investigation side of it that they forget to bring the sense of camaraderie into the environment. And the reason why this is really important is because more activity tends to happen when people are hanging out, having fun, talking normally, conversing and this type of thing, than it does when you sit there and you're focused and focused and focused on something actually happening. The odds of it going that way are really slim. It actually tends to bring more activity to the surface when you're kind of just ignoring it. It's kind of in your peripheral, you're having a good discussion and things like that. So with EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, we use it. And it can be a really, really, really great tool. I typically completely stay away from things like gimmicky stuff like spirit boxes, ghost boxes, anything like that. REM pods tend to just be not a functional tool. Anything that's sort of been designed for this stuff. And the problem is that there is no litmus test for a ghost, right? There just isn't. We don't know what a spirit is made of. We don't know what a ghost is made of. None of these things. We have no clue. And therefore you can't calibrate a meter or anything else to test for these things. You simply can't. So usually what we're using is stuff that's a little bit more, I guess, down to earth, when it comes to watching phenomena start to kick up and happen. Definitely open to new gear and new equipment and things like that, but I find a lot of the stuff that's come out is just fundamentally flawed because of that reason. So EVP, we're sitting down, everybody talks normally, nobody whispers. The worst thing you can possibly do, don't whisper, okay? Don't whisper, because when you're playing the audio recording back later, you can't tell who's who and who said what, and it's terrible. So you're better off to just not whisper. Just don't do that. And it's a lot of just, it asks, like you can start to ask a question, or introduce yourself or anything like that, but just let it run. Just let it go. Don't focus on trying to get an answer, because as soon as you start to do that, oftentimes it just doesn't. You've lost it. It doesn't work. So we'll go through a number of nights, sometimes a number of days, like that, picking up as much as we possibly can. And at the same time, what starts to happen is depending on what's going on in the house, delving into the property itself. So going to the archives, reaching out to city archives, provincial archives, and things like that, trying to figure out what's going on the property. Case I'm working right now, about an hour south of me, that's been a huge portion of the case, has been looking up what's gone on the land before, because we've had a number of search dogs and cadaver dogs who have hit on targets on the property. So now we're starting to look at, okay, well, what's gone on there before? Was there, for example, residential schools? Was there burial grounds there? Was there, what's going on in that specific area? And you start to dig things up. And let me tell you, when you get into that side of it, a lot of people think, oh, it's the boring stuff. We don't want to do the paperwork. But I'll tell you straight up, that look into history, when you guys start digging into like property stuff, history as to what's going on the land, that kind of thing, it will mess you right up. It is crazy. It can be some of the most interesting, most fascinating parts about paranormal research, is digging into the historical paperwork of a city or a venue or anything like that. That was one of the ways that I discovered very early on about some of the residential school atrocities at an abandoned hospital that was just up the road from me here in Edmonton, called the Charles Capsule. And it's taken about 20 years since I started, since I was working on that, for that to come forward. And it's been this year that information has now become widely known and widely public. And it all had to do with abuses that went on in this hospital and a residential school that was in the area. And it was horrific. Like probably one of the most horrific stories in Edmonton's history. But it took that long. And if the crazy thing was, it was there. It was always there. If you dug around into the papers, dug around back into the historical records, the information was there. It's just nobody cared and nobody bothered to look it up. And bottom line is nobody cared. So it was really, it's been interesting to watch that kind of all come to light. Everybody thinks it's new, and it's really not. So digging into that aspect of it is just huge, which is one of the reasons why I started the show Historically Haunted, was for that reason. You end up with the most bizarre, crazy stories that your city is holding that you had no clue was there, and you end up uncovering some just like unbelievable stuff. Sometimes really great stuff, sometimes really terrible stuff. So that all plays into the investigation as well, especially depending on what the geology of the land is. We're looking for things like in the river valley here, for instance, you've got these really weird spikes of electromagnetic fields up and down all the time. And the reason for that, and the reason why our cameras, for example, would cut out, batteries would die all of a sudden, can be a pain in the ass to do any sort of investigation work down there. And the reason why is because we're sitting on a bed of quartz. So the quartz bed actually generates its own electromagnetic fields, right? And when there's enough energy kind of just generated within it, because quartz operates similar to your watch, right? So if you've got a quartz watch, you know how that works. So when you've got a quartz bed underneath the land, it can do the same thing. It spikes with electromagnetic fields and stuff like that, and it'll kill your batteries. So we had to know that, right? Otherwise we would have thought, oh, it's some sort of a paranormal anomaly. Well, no, it's not. It actually has to do with the geology. So we're always looking at that kind of thing, always looking at things like structural work, plumbing, that kind of stuff. And then it becomes a matter, once we rule as much out as we can, it becomes then a matter of figuring out, okay, now we have to start dealing with people. And this is where it gets real, because I think so many of these investigators, so many people go into cases, especially these sort of hobbyist ghost hunters, in a fashion where they really, really want the evidence, they want the thrill of experiencing it, and then they kind of pack up and leave. And this is where things get real for a lot of the people, I think, that get involved in this, because your client is oftentimes very traumatized. They're looking for some sort of a solution. They're looking for help. They're looking for something to move forward on. And sometimes you've got families that are on the verge of divorce. Sometimes you've got families that are on the verge of bankruptcy because they've moved 10 times and they can't get away from what's going on. It's messy. It can be messy, and it's emotional and heavy. And that's ultimately where my program, Teaching the Living, would come in an investigation for myself, is that now we have to start working with the people and their emotional state. And one of the things that we gather in that beginning interview that I was talking about is exactly that. What are the stressors? What's triggered this? What's going on? What is their role in the environment, in the activity that's happening? What's going on? Where are they on that emotional scale that they are in the vicinity of receiving this stuff that they've got attracting into their experience? And from that point on, it really is less about the phenomenon itself and more about how do you get these people into a better receiving place in terms of what they are experiencing in their house. Because we know once we get them off of that negative emotion, their experience becomes quite different. And that becomes the primary job, is talking and coaching the people and getting them from that negative state of being up into a happy, more positive, more passionate state of their life experience. And that's what we do. So the rest of that really is for us how to solve breakdowns within families, within businesses, between staff. How do you get people off of the mental track of being afraid in their own home, and get them to a place where they can find some peace and move them up that emotional scale. So that really is what it looks like for me when I go into these locations. And that's where the real work begins, because you begin to realize when you're dealing with people, some people really, 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 really want that toxicity, and they will fight you for their own limitation. They really will. They will fight you for their limitation. And some clients, and it's a vast range, but you run into some really interesting individuals, people that not only might want the activity in their experience because it's making them feel special. Some people are literally buddied up with the negative entity as much as they hate that damn thing. They've sort of buddied up with them because it's a not so good old friend now, and they will fight for their relationship with it. You'll get some really interesting and bizarre psychological dynamics when you get into paranormal research and what people are willing to sort of grab onto, and what they want to stick with. They will fight for their own pain. It's really interesting. So the other side of this, which always gets very interesting, is I work with a good number of extremely talented mediums. And I, like, half the time I could not be doing this without their work and what they do. They are absolutely brilliant. I work with two in particular, Greg and Matt, who are possibly the best in their field. I can't say enough about these two. I've worked with them for almost the entire time I've been doing this. And it was actually this last case that I was working on, when the reason why we actually brought the cadaver dogs out, because they're always a really, really great resource when you're doing a large property, and you're not sure about, what's going on. Greg was actually the one who said, we need to bring the cadaver dogs out. This is an area of interest for me. I think we need to search it. And he was dead on. 6 dogs hit 6 targets. It was really, really wild. But he nailed it. And so without him, that next step would not have come to light. The problem is if you're bringing in things like mediums and stuff like that, the rate of fraud is high, like extremely high. A lot of people will do what they call a hot reading, and a hot reading is, once they have the location and information about the place, they'll actually go research it, and then they show up at the property later and they seem to have all this information, and it's really just, they've just done a lot of research. Probably one of the most famous mediums that was really bad for that was Derek Akora. And it was a friend of mine, Dr. Kieran O'Keefe, who actually caught him doing it, just about cost Kieran his career in television, because he spoke out. Derek Akora was very, very popular, and but Kieran couldn't let the public continue to get snowed, and he came out and said, no, what happens is that they end up finding out the location, and then his wife goes and does the research, and would often speak to him in an in-ear monitor or something like that, and give him the information. And what clued Kieran in, when this is really quite funny, what clued him in was that when Derek would come up with a name, the name would be something like, for example, H.H. Holmes, but he would never get the first name, for instance. And the reason why he would find out later would be because that's what was on the tombstone that was identifiable. But the first name wasn't identifiable, but she would go and read it and whatnot, and then come back later and say, oh no, it's H.H. Holmes, not knowing the first name. So it was quite interesting, but it's a problem. It's a problem when we get into the mediumship side of stuff. But they can be extremely crucial. My friend Matt, who is extremely good at what he does with this stuff, interestingly enough, sees things in symbols and symbology, which gets really quite interesting, because what he ends up discovering is he'll see things in images that might not be directly related to what's going on. It might not be directly related to the phenomenon itself, but it's linked up through symbolism and stuff like that. It's very weird, but he's dead accurate every single time, and he's brilliant at psychometry, really brilliant at psychometry. And so yeah, really, really cool. So all these people have different ways of doing things, but definitely a tool that I would never ever discount, because they can be some of the keys to breaking open cases, which is so important. So yeah, but that's what an investigation for me kind of looks like, where it's a long process. Sometimes you're with people for, a couple of days. Sometimes you're with them for a couple of years, depending on what's going on. As I say, the case that I'm working on the south side right now, it's been, oh my God, 2 years? I think it's 2 years going on, just trying to get things moving forward for them, because we've got a huge acreage to deal with. We've got, you know, like real stuff. There's forest areas that have to be cleared out. There's you know, it's a long process, and you're dealing, of course, with long winters here in Alberta and all sorts of things. So there's gaps in time where we have to wait for things to clear up so that we can keep going. So it's a really long process depending on what you've got going, and how you're willing to you know, get in there and dig in and help clients. But that's kind of an overview. And you know, you want to eventually, at the end of the day, with most cases, be able to give your client a plan as to this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to deal with, in the case of a negative entity, this is how you're going to deal with this thing moment to moment. And this is the long-term plan that you're going to get yourself off of this negative frequency, and you're going to get yourself into a better feeling place. So it's usually, the plans are about twofold, and you've got to be able to sort of deal with what's going on in the moment, which can be pretty chaotic, to giving them a long-term plan so that they can start to see progress and get themselves out of it. So we've got a long list of tools that we give to clients and people and stuff like that. We give a long list of tools. We give a long list of you know, just general overall things that they can be doing. And yeah, we move them forward. And sometimes it means bringing in counseling services. Sometimes it means bringing in all sorts of different resources from all over. You know, and it's not a one-person thing. Sometimes it's sending them off to their doctor and getting their meds redone or something. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, but that's kind of the general overview of what investigations look like for me. They're in depth, as you can see. The TV shows, needless to say, don't quite cover it, because they just don't. They're looking for impact, immediate impact, right? All the time, immediate impact. What can we show? What can we get on camera that's going to look fantastic and amazing? And you know, you don't always get that. You really don't always get that. And it does come down to more to do with the individuals. So what can you do? So that's it. that's what we do. So I hope that answered that question. I can't remember who asked that question. I wrote it down and then I didn't write down their name. So I hope whoever asked that question, I hope that makes sense. I hope you guys are doing awesome this week, because there's been so much going on. The America there is like almost reopened too, which is really nice. Canada is slow as hell, is what's going on up here. Nothing is what's going on up here for the most part. So yeah, so anyway, going forward into the next couple of weeks, you guys are going to hear more about the live stream stuff that's coming up. You guys will be able to get tickets and attend with me as we move along into what's going on, and start creating some shows here that you guys can actually attend, whether or not you're in Edmonton or in Calgary or New York, Vancouver, or whatever. It doesn't matter. You guys will be able to attend this stuff. And we're starting, as I say, with Historically Haunted, which, let's say, the live stream dates will be coming out in the next week or so, and we'll get that rolling so that you guys can be there and attend and see this stuff almost in person. It will almost be in person. So it'll be really, really good. So please stay tuned. I'm slowly starting to post up the dates on the upcoming events page on entityseeker.ca. But they will get posted on the Entity Seeker Facebook page, as well as the group as well, because I really want to get this rolling so that everybody's got a shot at seeing some of this stuff. It's gonna be really, really cool. So that being said, everyone, we need some affirmations before we go, because it's like, that time. So everybody shake off the last couple of weeks. Shake off the last couple of weeks. Just shake it off, everyone. And take a deep breath. I'm a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining my connection and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I am able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I am able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. Everybody take a breath. All right, you guys, there we go. Day 150 is done. Day 150 is done. I am looking forward to next week. Please keep the questions coming. We've got more stuff coming up, and there will be more stuff, as I say, available that's going to be coming out, rolling out for summer for the Entity Seeker community. And we're gonna make this work. So please, everybody, keep your vibrations high. Get that, get out there, get some sun, and try to enjoy the summer as best you possibly can, no matter what's going on. And we will see you guys next Wednesday, because that's how it works. So anybody who's new, you can go to entityseeker.ca for all the past classes, as well as youtube.com/entityseeker as well. So it's, yeah, lots to do, lots to see. And then Twitter, I'm on as Morgan Knudsen, and also on Cameo now, which is kind of fun. So you can book me on Cameo, which is pretty cool. And I might do some fire stuff for you. So there it is. Anyway, see you guys. Have an amazing week.